working on it, I think they know what everyone expects to see. So that's extremely helpful.
Yeah.
And definitely not marginalizing characters. Like when we were talking about how Lucy and Nina get merged together a lot. Making sure that you're doing the characters justice. And, you know, if there is a character that you're like, I'm not really sure if they're necessary, definitely weighing that out. Because sometimes there are some characters that maybe aren't integral to the adaptation that you're creating, but being a fan of what you're adapting helps immensely.
Yeah, I agree. I like my list of movie adaptations from books that I think is like legitimately great is pretty short. I think it's a really tricky business, and I've talked to Erin more than once about how, in general, it's not that movies or plays that are adapting novels cut things out. I get cutting things out. You have to cut things out. It's a novel.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the case of Dracula, it's like 400 pages long. And no audience wants to sit for that long. Nobody. No one ever.
Yeah. Except the Dracula purists we talked about.
Right, except the 12-year-old Dracula purists.
Probably sit through it.
But where I start to get, like, huffy and on my high horse is when you start adding shit in. And which is why I can talk all day about how the Harry Potter adaptations make me crazy. And why the Princess Bride adaptation does not. You know?
That makes sense. In Aaron's, the adaptation, and I'm going to speak for him a little bit since he's gone, and he might cut it, who knows. I stay as true as he could to the book. That was his goal. He did cut Lucy's mother. She's not a character, but he kind of went back and forth with that one, and he realized that it was necessary for the adaptation.
Yeah.
But the things that Aaron has added in to the adaptation are, for the most part, subtle.
Yeah.
And
necessary to make it relevant for a modern audience.
And relationship building.
Yeah.
He doesn't add, like, there's no, like, significant event that he adds. There's no, there's no, like, let's spend 15 minutes on this thing that doesn't happen in the book when we could be doing the thing that does happen in the book. Ask me again how I feel about the Harry Potter adaptation.
Did you put your name on the gauntlet of fire?
Why? But he adds sort of, just like little touches of dialogue that make the characters three-dimensional when they were two-dimensional in the first place. He gives Quincy sort of like a guilt complex about some Native Americans that he may or may not have killed. He gives Seward a guilt complex about how he is not as protective of Lucy as he ought to be. He gives Arthur a guilt complex over how he's kind of useless. And it just sort of helps to flush them out and make them humans as opposed to, like, Keanu Reeves.
Sad cute. No, that definitely makes sense. I will say, like, there are certain things that I've, like, specifically rage watched in Gotham because they have deviated so much. However, like, specifically with that show, I will say, like, with all the weird crap that they're doing, there's one storyline that I'm absolutely smitten with, and it's a general slight reimagining of one of the characters, but it's not, like, it's like an acceptable reimagining. I think that anytime that someone takes a character from such a well-known, part of pop culture, there's going to be more scrutiny, and you do have a lot of people who are very interested in Dracula, so it's not like he's making Dracula, like, a tap dancing fish,
I'd say that.
Great idea.
That's fine, I'm ready, man. But, like, there are certain things that I feel like, there are certain characters you can do certain things with. I think it's interesting that he's giving those characters different outlooks and different, it just seems like he's building them more.
Yeah. When I was reading his first draft, I was like leaving comments in the margin, and when that Quincy thing came up with the possible killing of Native Americans, I believe my exact words were, "Whoa, shit got real." Because Quincy's never had that. Quincy's like, I'm an American cowboy, and that's about it. I brought this Bowie knife. Good thing too, because I'm gonna kill Dracula. And that's all you get. And it's interesting to have anything about him that's remotely humanizing. Not that killing Native Americans is humanizing. Please edit that, Aaron.
But no, you have to make it entertaining.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's hard to remember that as a viewer of some, like, especially, and I'm sure you're like this too, because it sounds like you are, when you're going into something that's an adaptation, you're like, okay, go ahead. Bring it on. Let's see what you did.
Make my day.
Yeah. It's like you kind of just want to stand there with your arms crossed and be like, how can I criticize those? But, like, you have to also entertain people. And you have to keep their interest. And you have to make sure that, you know, what you're doing is a true reflection of yourself as an artist and the work that you're reimagining.
But there's something to be said for being respectful to the original content.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like especially recently, adaptations have gotten more and more tricky. Because there's like great adaptations like like Princess Bride. Princess Bride is kind of like my only example, guys. But or the version of Wuthering Heights that Tom Hardy's in is a fantastic adaptation of Wuthering Heights. It's very true to the book, and still compelling and still interesting and still Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
The BBC's Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth. Is probably the best adaptation of anything ever in the land. And that's basically word for word the novel.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do anything. But, so, my example, and we're all going to be grateful for the fact that 906 co-founder and board member Brian Elliott is not here, is the current film adaptations of The Hobbit, which are, I feel, pretty bad.
They're awful.
And they come from this, like, purist fan base who's like, but it's got, they're not making anything up. That's true. They're not. All of the added brouhaha that's in that film has source material. It's just not in The Hobbit. The source material is from this very thick book called The Silmarillion, which is basically like the Elfish Bible. And yeah, it has source material, but when you tell me that you're going to adapt The Hobbit, I kind of expect to watch The Hobbit.
Right. Well, you should make it more clear that it's The Hobbit plus
The Silmarillion.
Based on The Hobbit, which is a very short book.
Yeah,
Not 3 movies worth of a book.
No, Lord of the Rings was 3 books.
Yeah.
3 films seems to make a lot of sense in my brain.
Right.
1 book per film.
Mm-hmm.
The Hobbit is 1 book. It's itty bitty. It's like 300 pages, like 2.
If that, it's like I'm just like I see it in my head. It's like
bitty.
like a half an inch to an inch thick.
And they're making it into 3 films. And so of course they have to pull they have to pull stuff from elsewhere, or else they're gonna have nothing to film.
Right.
But it feels to me like a monetary grab. Feels to me like a Lord of the Rings was so successful. You know how we can make more money?
Right.
More movies!
Have it.
And it feels disingenuous to me, but my husband, Brian, is one of that fan base who feels that it's fine, who loves it, who's happy about it, who all he wants in the world is to see the Silmarillion film.
Yeah.
We love Brian Elliott.
So it's this like, I've for most of my life with adaptations, I felt like, stay true to the source material, don't add anything in. And I'm starting to feel like, okay, but like, let's back off of the source material a little bit and make, one succinct film. Let's make one succinct play. Let's just make sure that it's interesting and applicable,
It's not really an adaptation. But again, I should have said at the beginning, I guess, my introduction, that what I'm bringing to the table is a lot of pop culture vampire knowledge. Here it is.
That's good.
There's an episode of Buffy that's called Buffy Meets Dracula or Buffy versus Dracula, and I would almost count it as a Dracula like adaptation in a way because it's very in this mythos where vampires are very different from Dracula. Dracula shows up and is almost like this like celebrity vampire in a way, but he's exactly like he is in the book. He's fog and he's bewitching and in Buffy, vampires are monsters, are just monsters. He shows up and he's kind of this like compelling, charming, comes to the window and seeps in like fog, sort of adaptation, which was clever, I thought.
Is he just a monster in that, or do people feel bad for him?
He's a monster.
Okay.
He's a monster. At the end of the day, he is a monster. But he's just different than the other vampires in the series, in the mythos of Buffy, with two exceptions, are there to kill you. Are just there to, they're not going to waste their time like bewitching you.
Right.
Unless they're trying to like lure you out of like a club and then kill you in the alley. They're just going to sneak up behind you.
They're not going to be dicks and toy with you.
No, they're just going to be like, come here.
So is that like an example of an adaptation where it's sort of like a tip of the hat and less like an adaptation?
Yeah, it's more of an homage than an adaptation, but it's, knowing more about Dracula now, it's very true to Dracula, which I thought was interesting.
Because, I mean, not saying anything about Buffy, Buffy's awesome, but that would be the first place that you think would do like a true homage to.
Especially since they're combining two different vampire mythologies.
Right.
But it was clever.
So that's just about all the time we have for now. But before we go, let's go around the table and do some shameless plugging. Sarah, what are you working on these days?
As we've been talking about, I'll be directing our stage reading of Aaron's adaptation of Dracula in November, on November 17th. Come see it. It's going to be great. That's the only that's the only project that is solidified that I'm working on right now.
Actually, what are you working on these days?
Right now I'm kind of in between projects, but there will be some fun stuff coming in the spring for 906, and that's all I'm going to say.
Fantastic. Jess, what are you working on these days?
I'm writing and preparing to shoot things with a camera.
Oh yes, and that. I don't know.
So I'm working on a series of series of short horror films. We're going to start shooting the first one next weekend, starring the lovely Ashley Stoney. But I have nothing really going up anytime soon. But just a lot of writing and projects in motion.
Wonderful. Just because Aaron's not here, Aaron has left us, in fact, to go open musical The Living Dead, which is performing at Stage 773 through Halloween, I believe.
I think it goes through the first weekend in November.
It's a good time. The comedic musical, fantastic. Go check it out. I am directing Little Women with 20% Theater Company, which opens on November 30th at Black Rock Bar. If you have thoughts or ideas you'd like to share with us about the formulation of Dracula mythos or what makes great adaptations great, please find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/906THEATRECO or follow us on Twitter at 906theaterco. Again, that's RE for theater. Or just mark your calendars for our staged reading of Dracula on November 17th at 7:30 p.m. at Black Rock Bar off the Addison Brown line stop, where you can join us for our post-show discussion about this exciting new project. Dial 906 is produced by 906 Theater Company and is recorded and edited by Aaron Sarka. Thank you for listening.